May 21st, 2014. Guys, I want to read something, and it has to do with backfiring of the sanctions against Russia, basically. And we've seen it with the threat now with Russia threatening to cut off the natural gas supply to Europe because of the U.S.'s sanctions and the Euro sanctions against Russia for the Ukrainian crisis. We've seen a lot of inside moves there inside that country by both players, stirring up trouble. But let me read this. It says, in a symbolic blow to U.S. global financial power, Russia and China took a small step toward undercutting the domination of the U.S. dollar as the international reserve currency on Tuesday when Russia's second biggest financial institution, VTB, signed a deal with the Bank of China to bypass the dollar and pay each other in domestic currencies. The so-called Agreement on Cooperation, signed in the presence of Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is on a visit to Shanghai, could be followed by a long-awaited announcement this week of massive natural gas deal 10 years in the making. I said these chess moves have been put in place. Our countries have done a huge job to reach a historic landmark. Putin said on Tuesday, making note of the $100 billion in annual trade that has been achieved between the two countries. Demand for the dollar, which has long served as a safe and reliable reserve currency in international transactions, listen to this, has allowed the U.S. to borrow almost unlimited cash and spend well beyond its means, which some economists say has afforded the United States an outside influence on world affairs. They know it. The whole world knows it. The only people that don't realize it seems to be the majority of Americans. It says the BRIC countries, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the five major emerging economies have long sought to diminish their dependence on the dollar as a means of reshaping the world financial and geopolitical order. For its part, China sees the dominance of the dollar in international trade transactions as a remnant of American global dominance, which they hope to overthrow in the years ahead. Said some have been tempted to view Tuesday's deal in the context of Putin's showdown with the West over the crisis in Ukraine. Of course it is. And Putin, like he said, he made good on his promise of retaliation against the West meddling in Russia's affairs near and abroad. Now this goes on to talk about, again, Russia's threat to simply cut off the natural gas pipelines to Europe and to find new markets for Russian energy exports. They've done it with China. That deal, I think, was signed today. This was yesterday. It says, separate from the political posturing, the Russian imperative to find new markets for its energy exports is nonetheless very real. Energy demands in Europe have plateaued and may even decline in the long term because of stringent environmental regulations. It says if Russia wants to continue to be a petrostate, it has to shift marketing of its exports to Asia, who noted that Western energy conglomerates like ExxonMobil have begun doing the same, fracking and destroying it and shipping it overseas. Anyway, we don't want to push this too far. He said he sees it as a formation of a new global anti-American bloc that is starting a new Cold War, he added. This is market-driven. May not be a Cold War long. Now, in another article, it gets right to the prophetic part of this, guys. It says, right now Putin is in China meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Shanghai. Though the talks are ongoing, they have already released a joint statement which takes several jabs at U.S. foreign policy. Specifically, the two countries committed to reject unilateral sanctions of rhetoric. Putin and Xi also agreed to expand military cooperation and express grave concern over the crisis in Ukraine and condemn the funding of regime change. The U.S. government was not named explicitly in the condemnation, but the inference was very clear. Now, let me read this again. Putin and Xi also agreed to expand military cooperation. The sides noted the need to respect historical heritage of countries, their cultural traditions, and independently chosen public and political systems, the system of values and the ways of development. They counteract interference in domestic affairs of other countries, give up the language of unilateral sanctions, organize aid, fund, or encourage activity aimed at changing a constitutional system of a foreign country, or its involvement in any multipartite association of union, the document stated. I guess they did kind of infer to the U.S. there, but if the shoe fits, wear it. The statement also called for universal rules of behavior. Let me back up. All three countries involved are for the European Union, the U.S., China, and Russia have all been guilty of that. Now, the stock market's been watching this trip to China all week. It says the dollar slid to its weakest against the yen in more than 3 months on Monday as expectations of higher U.S. interest rates faded. We knew that was coming, but the yen's breakpoint, 101 yen per dollar, was the first time since November that it traded stronger than its 200-day moving average. Also, we talked about this, the treasuries were dipping. Remember, they weren't supposed to go below 2.68. They've been below that for 2 weeks. Here is also part of the biblical move, militarily, Russia and China. But all these red lines are the pipelines that feed Europe in the winter, their natural gas and their heat. That's being diverted to China. That's a map from a video last week when we were talking about that possibility happening, guys. But we have the joining of the two most powerful armies in the world. We've seen our army decimated. Again, is it an inside job? Is it a Trojan horse situation? Is that what we're dealing with? Think about it. They knew the only way to bring the most powerful nation down would have to be from the inside, with the blinders on to the American public. But in this painting, this mural that's there's a lot of symbology. First, we see a foreign troop wearing a gas mask. Some said alien. Looks like Chinese or Russian would fit. You see the the dove at the end of the sword. Remember, when they say peace, comes sudden destruction. And why are those messages there? Why we see the girl with the Bible, with the cross in the coffin, with the watch on this stone, guys? 7 marks in the middle of the 7. At 3.5 on the scale, is this swoosh, almost like that sword, almost like a comet. But the mural is symbolic of military attack and possibly something that the world space agencies know is coming through the sky. But right in the middle of the 7, we see that. But again, this is a major move. The kings of the East have united. There's pawns in the East like Iran, but not like Russia and China. Heads up, be safe. I'll let you guys know when we head out for D.C.